of her and Barack. Well, Barack couldn't get it up, so I had to, go to in vitro.
Oh no, that's interesting seeing that. There were rumors in Chicago for years when because we have members of our group that are from Chicago that Barack liked to go to certain bathhouses.
That is not a rumor. That's a fact.
Oh, it is.
Yes.
Okay.
Jesse Jackson.
Well,
wait a minute.
I never had
wait a
anybody
minute.
that saw him.
Wait a minute. Jesse Jackson and Rahm Emanuel have all acknowledged that they have lifetime memberships at the gay bathhouse. Jesse Jackson was sued.
Gosh.
Jesse Jackson was sued about 4 years ago by a gay valet who said Jesse asked him to perform all of these sexual acts without paying him. He refused to pay him for working for him, and he was tired. He filed a lawsuit. And the thing about it is they squashed that, man. I mean, that all of these pro LGBT types went to ground zero when this stuff came out on Jesse. Now, those rumors have been floating around about black clergy, about the Trinity Church. Jerry Corsi came to me one day and he said, Charles, it's alleged that Barack Obama is bisexual. I said, well, Jerry, I don't engage in those conversations, but I can tell you what, if I were you, I would come to Chicago and go to the church on Sunday and ask the parishioners. And that's what he did. So when you go online and look for Barack Obama, Donald Young, Jerry wrote an article in WND, the World Daily News, that talks about what the parishioners had to say about Mr. Obama and his proclivity for being very close to homosexuals in the church. So, hey, all I have to say is, I'm just saying, as the kids would say, hey, I'm just saying, as a heterosexual male, as a religious male, as a male who believes in God, believes in the Bible, I don't get caught up in that LGBT. I'm like, hey, I don't deal with that. That's not something I'm going to talk about. It's not important to me. People who are playing with in my opinion, very dangerous precepts. Those are things that are talked about in the Bible that says you will go to hell for. I'm not going to argue about who's going to hell. You could not legislate my moral compass. Let's be clear. I'm serious.
And I'm probably closer to your viewpoint on it, because as far as I'm concerned, people can do what they want
exactly.
as long as they are not going to, harm others. And I know that sounds very cliche-ish, but truthfully, people do what they need to do, but don't try to make me wrong for not doing it myself.
Well, I grew up.
Let me have my life the same way.
Well, the bottom line is, as a black man in America, I've always lived in two worlds. So I could go down the road of, and I think other white people have the same issue, but it's more prevalent among blacks in terms of their access to, or our access to drugs, crime, just bad behavior. The access was more prevalent in the black community or being around blacks. And you had to make choices. And my choice was, I didn't hang with the black kids. I didn't, because they weren't doing the things that I did. They didn't bring books home. They smoked cigarettes. They did things that I just did not do, and I was not going to do or participate in. And I made that choice early on. So if that's profiling, if that's being uppity, if that's being an Uncle Tom, guess what? I'm all those things. Because at the end of the day, I didn't go to jail like a lot of my friends, the guys I grew up with. I have all of my teeth. See here, folks, I'm on YouTube right now. You see, folks, these are all my teeth. These are not dentures. Yeah, but I have friends, they don't have any teeth. And you ask, well, what happened? Well, they got them knocked out gambling or whatever. It's just people have choices to make. And my thing is, I tried to live a moral life. And as John Adams was very clear, about the Constitution. He's very clear about morality. He's very clear on these issues, and people try to ignore uh, the founding fathers and their precepts and what they really meant. Because everybody tries to say, well, the founding fathers didn't talk about slavery. Well, that's a damn lie. They debated slavery. I mean, the 3/5 compromise was a result of debating slavery. So how can you say that slavery wasn't an issue when we wrote the Constitution? It was very much on the founding fathers' mind and eliminating the institution of slavery. So, I just know that for me, we need to start telling the truth about history, and this country will be a lot better off. But I have a question for you. I mean, you're a guy who's very worldly.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
No, I just said yes, sir.
Yeah, so you're a guy who's very worldly. You're well read. You went to USF, so I know you got a great education. That's Bill Russell and Johnny Mathis's old school. Did you know that?
Oh, I know very well. Yes.
So,
yes.
but in South Africa today, the South Africans are killing. I want to repeat, are killing Nigerians who are in their country, legally and illegally. They're killing them. They're not asking them to leave. They're killing them. And nobody's talking about it.
Wow.
No one's talking. You haven't heard that in the news, have you?
Not a thing. Nope. Not a thing.
And so the president of Uganda, the president of Nigeria has come out. I mean, the president of South Africa came out with a statement. Guy's name is Cyril Ramaphosa. He came out with a statement, and in the end of the statement, he says he's convening the ministers in a security cluster to make sure that we keep a close eye on these acts of violence, of wanton violence, and find ways of stopping them. Well, they haven't, and they've deployed the police to try to stop this wanton attack on Nigerians in South Africa. It's amazing.
Wow. And here we are being attacked daily because stopping people who are trying to come across from into the country from Mexico and other places. I totally empathize with anybody that's trying to do better for their family, Charles. I totally do. But, even Bernie Sanders had to say that you can't pay for everybody in the world. And that's part of the problem with that. And it's like, why don't the people in the press talk about what you just brought up, which is not telling the people they've got to sleep in a bunk room or something, but actually killing them? I guess the reason is they don't want people to realize the truth of what's really going on in the contrast.
Well, the truth of what's...
Is there another country in the world that would let people just come in?
Well,
like the liberals want?
Well, what happened was, and the EU, but what happened is, and this is the interesting thing, the Nigerians start coming into South Africa, and the South Africans' complaint are several things. They're taking our land. They're taking our businesses, they're taking our women, and we fought to keep this country to make this country free for us. And the Nigerians are here taking advantage of all the things we fought for. They didn't fight for these things, and so they're fighting the Nigerians.
Wow.
But the question becomes for me, Stephen, why isn't this on CNN? Why isn't this on NBC? This inhumanity to other humans. They call it xenophobia because it's black on black. Here they would call it racism because it would be basically whites, blacks, yellows, browns against the people who are coming here. Because Americans, it's all of us Americans against these foreigners who are coming here, and they try to make it a racial issue, but it's not a racial issue. It's an American issue.
Yes. Yeah. And it's also pointing out the failings of a lot of these other countries and the corruption that takes place, because none of these people are going to leave a successful country. You don't have a lot of Australians trying to come here. You don't have a lot of New Zealanders trying to come here.
Right.
But
a lot of Frenchmen trying to come here, or people from Great Britain.
no,
However, droves of people in the front page of Wall Street Journal on Tuesday, there were pictures of these migrants that the Spanish had picked up in the Mediterranean Sea, who were basically, these people were in the kind of rafts that you put in a swimming pool, and they were out in shark infested waters trying to paddle across the Strait of Gibraltar with the sharks hitting the bottom of the boat. Okay. That's how desperate they are to get out of these shithole countries, and that's what we call them. You know, it's amazing that they call them, the people who live in those countries call them shithole countries, and then they want to try to castigate Trump. I'm like, have you ever been to these countries? Have you ever talked to people from these countries? They'll tell you they're shithole countries. Oops, did I say that?
No, you're going to get blacklisted as well. No pun intended.
Well, I'm blacklisted as it is, but we're getting ready to hopefully launch. We're getting ready to hopefully launch some new media outlets, some new media hits for us. Because, you know, we do a good job. We have, you know, great guests. We talk about great topics, like this topic in South Africa. You know, the question is, how come MSNBC and CNN don't have reporters in South Africa talking about the inhumanity of the South Africans to Nigerians?
Well, I would add Fox to that. I think that all of these should be doing that, and maybe Fox does.
Well, Fox has it. They have it.
Fox. I try to watch the others too, but I've never heard Fox mentioned.
Well, the thing is, it's been going on since April. But more importantly, Stephen, talking about this, I don't watch Fox anymore. I used to religiously watch Fox. I just don't watch it anymore. I don't find it.
Unfortunately, I have to agree with you. Most of these are really not. But I feel like I have an obligation to keep at least an eye on what's happening, what these people are saying. But truthfully, I'm afraid, are all in the same pile, where they're perpetuating a way of life that involves them getting paid very well to talk about things, as long as they don't rough.
You know, I hear Hannity.
They're all guilty of that.
Well, I hear Hannity. You know, Hannity is a total sellout as far as I'm concerned. You know, he hops on an issue for a minute and then he runs away from it, you know, before it heats up. And I don't know where Hannity is anymore now that he's taken over Bill O'Reilly's slot as the #1 cable show. But since Roger Ailes and Bill Shine have left Fox, I just don't see it. I just don't see the kind of cutting edge, in your face reporting about issues that are true, that affect the American people. I sometimes I look at Fox and they're just not much better than MSNBC.
I'm beginning to get to that point, although, you know, there are some people that I listen to who I think, you know, are more libertarian, maybe like Tucker Carlson in many cases. But there are a lot of them that are just people that, if you change the name tag at the bottom from station, you wouldn't really think anything about it. They could be from CNN or they could be from Fox.
Yeah, because the guy I can't stand is that Shepard Smith. I cannot stand Shepard Smith. I won't even look at an advertisement about Shepard Smith, okay? I cannot stand the guy. You know, he's such a...
Well, at least he's off of the prime time for quite a while. That was more, I don't remember, but, you know, it was an afternoon show or something. But as far as I know, he doesn't have a regular show, does he?
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he comes on at about
He does?
3, yeah, it comes on at 3:00 my time, I think.
Well, in the afternoon here. But I'm with is that when I had an opportunity to do a little bit on Fox Business where I was talking about the fair tax, but it was one time, and frankly, they refused to put it up. They normally put up little clippings of this. They had a guy talking about mobile homes,
Mm-hmm.
and they had a guy talking about I don't remember what, but they did not put the section I did up with Stuart Varney at all. And the reason Trump tax plan, and I said, yeah, except it doesn't solve. And I started naming the problems, and he was polite to me, but he wanted his guests to say.
Mm-hmm.
And I've not. Let's just say I've not been asked back. and I think that what we've got right now is, Trump is a person who likes the fair tax. He liked the idea, Charles, of coming back to the fair tax. But he has not had the political capital to overcome Mitch McConnell and back, when it was passed, Paul Ryan. He had to be taught a lesson that you have to do it their way if you're going to succeed in D.C.
Yeah, but Donald has been able. I think Donald has been able to, in the last 3 years, to be very successful on his own. And that upsets, I think, the liberals more than anything else. That here's a guy they fought tooth and nail on every issue, even the border wall. So they said, well, he took $3 billion from DOD and from projects. Those are pork projects. They gave up pork projects, 260 pork projects to build a damn wall. So what?
But see, those were paid the lobbyists, others. I believe they're so upset is that they're not going to give a refund, but they may not be able to extort the same amount of money again. Can't guarantee it go through,
and that they get contracts.
And that I think that's where you really get into it. It's like I frankly have become so cynical about the intentions of most of those people. And I've been going up there for 30 years, and I've gotten to know some very well. And there are quite a few of them that I really think are real decent people. But in order to last up there, in order to have an office that doesn't in the basement, in order to have, committee assignments that are of some value in their district, and more importantly, to get supported when they run for re-election. And if they don't toe the line, getting defeated because they're not backed and they're pushed out. People that I think go up there that are really well-intentioned, but they get somebody sets them down and explains that,
okay,
Charles, if you keep talking about doing that, about cutting our wages, or maybe like Ron DeSantis had a bill he introduced, he's now governor of Florida, but he wanted to make Congress live by the same laws that everybody else had to. What a concept.
Yeah.
If you want health care to be done, you got to make sure our health care is the same. And then people came back and said, well, we couldn't afford it. Our staff couldn't afford it. And he goes, my point just got made. You're making everybody else do it. You need to do it. He had another bill where he was going to eliminate the federal pension for members of Congress. They would have the ability to do just like you and I. They could contribute to a 401k, and there would be some matching, but it wouldn't be this, serve 4 terms or 3 terms and get your salary for life. Treated just like you and me.
I think it's 1 term.
Well, they get it, but I think it's after 3. Don't they get 100% the first term? Don't they get like 40%? And then it goes, I haven't looked in a long time, but it used to be that they had to be there 3 terms, I believe, in order to get 100% or almost 100% and health care for life. So they are they're looking at this, and they looked at Ron and they thought this guy doesn't belong here. You know, he's he's not a good guy for us because he's going to take away. And talk to him. He said, "Look, I just thought that we all in Congress should be treated like everyone else. You know, we're not a ruling class or shouldn't be."
Well, that's the thing about
And
DC. You've been on DC long enough to know, people talk about the senator, and I'm like, I don't want to hear this third person bullshit. These people work for us. They have a name. I'm not walking around worshiping these people. They work for the American people. It's not like they have an employer. It's called it's called the American people. It's called the electorate, and they need to be responsible. And see, that's the problem with like black politicians. They come back to the neighbor. They don't do jack shit. Bobby Rush hasn't done jack shit in 20 years in office. He can't talk about one thing that he's done for his district except put black criminals back in the district. But I see that more among white politicians who come back with buffed out and they're high and mighty and they don't have to deal with constituents. If you talk to people who knew Jerry Ford, for instance, everybody in Grand Rapids felt that Jerry Ford was their surrogate father or their uncle or their cousin or grandfather. Right. Everybody knew Jerry Ford. He was a man of the people. Today, these people act like, well, what is it? What's that stuff? Purell. It's like, I shake your hand. I got to run and get some Purell to wash your. I mean, could you imagine? Could you imagine Jerry Ford running into a SUV and asking for Purell? I can't imagine that. I just can't imagine that because that's not the kind of person he was.
No. And well, I got the opportunity, Charles, to be a page in Congress in 1965.
Uh-huh.
Now, that was a totally different time. But, we didn't have barriers in front of the house. You didn't have security in the house. You just walked in, walked around. And my particular congressman was a Democrat from Arkansas who had been there since, I think he got elected and sworn in 1941. So he was there for Pearl Harbor, and he had been there all that time. And a grand gentleman, one of those really loved people by both sides. And he took me onto the floor and introduced me to Jerry Ford, when he was the minority leader. And what a charming, friendly, non-puffed up guy he was. And he and Jim Trimble, my member, they talked about how, what used to happen and what should happen is that, members should go home and maybe have to work, at a law practice or something else to supplement their income. And that the biggest problem with DC was when they put in air conditioning. Because before that, everybody went home. It was too hot to stay in D.C.
Right.
And so I second what you said about Ford. I mean, I thought he was really charming and down to earth and friendly. And I think most of the members that I interacted with as a lowly page were that way.
Well, what broke my heart, really broke my heart, was when I found out that Dennis Hastert, one of the things that drove Dennis Hastert from the speaker's job was the homosexual scandal among the pages on the Hill. Yes. And you had a congressman from Florida that got caught up in that made it a national story. And they found out that in order to be a page, you had to practice homosexuality at some point. So that was one of the requirements, and it was just a scandal. And Dennis ended up stepping down. But Dennis was a gentleman. He was an honorable man. When I knew he got, he stepped down because of the scandal. I just thought, okay, no big deal. But when it circles back and this guy's accusing him of homosexual acts and he's paying the guy, and I'm going, oh my God. I talked to J.C. Watts. Mm-hmm. I talked to J.C. Watts about it. He and I just commiserated because We spent a lot of time with Dennis when I would visit JC. We would talk to Dennis because Dennis was a mover and shaker, man. He did so much for everybody. He did so much for HBCUs. He's never, if anybody needs to be honored by the NAACP or the historically black colleges and universities, it's Ronald Reagan, Dennis Hastert, um, George W. Bush. These guys made sure that those schools had funding and were funding put back in the budget for them that was taken out by Democrat presidents and legislators. So, but those stories aren't told. Those are the stories I'm telling in my book.
It's going to be a great read. When are you going to be done?
I hope to be done with it shortly after Christmas. I'm going to avoid that Christmas rush and try to get in on next, the spring, after everybody's kind of read their books from Christmas, I'll get in on that spring wave, for summer reading.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my goal. That's my goal. I was in
I will. Go ahead.
I was in New York last weekend, and a weekend before last now. And I tell you, I went to a play called Ain't Too Proud to Beg. It was about the life and times of the Temptations at Motown and to present. It was great.
Nice.
It was great. Yeah, it was a great experience. But the experience that really moved me, and it still has an effect on me because I'm still talking about it, was the Basquiat exhibit at the Guggenheim called Defacement, where a young black guy had been killed for tagging by the New York transit police while he was in custody. They said he killed himself. So, again, another black man goes into custody. He just kills himself because he's in custody. I just don't understand what it is about these black guys in bars. They just can't sit in a cell and breathe, So anyway.
So bad.
Yeah, this guy had about 40 paintings. And I tell you, it just moved me so much, Stephen, that I'm still like I said, I'm still touched by these paintings. It was incredible. And I, like I said, I encourage all my listeners to go do that, to go and check out this exhibit. It's leaving shortly, and the play was a great play. But, the thing was, I'm at this Temptations play, and I would say 85% of the audience is white, and the theater is totally sold out, and everybody knows all the words to the Temptations, songs. They're jumping up and down in their seats. Everybody's on rhythm. I mean, it was just I'm sitting next to a white dude from San Diego. I used to live in San Diego. I lived there for 20 years. And he and I are talking about all these different spots and eating spots and hanging out. And we just had a great time. In fact, we're still emailing each other. But I met this guy sitting next to him at at this thing. So it was all good. It was a fun time, and just the way that I remember America being when I was younger.
Well, I think it still is, honestly. It's just that we don't hear about it, Charles. I think that what you ran into was not something that isn't happening out there, but it doesn't fit the agenda of a lot of the people who are trying to control us.
Right.
And so they talk about it's bad, but I started off in Arkansas, which is not, wasn't known for its, let's just say, was a black.
Okay.
We were told to call him uncle. And he and I got along out all the time. I worked with deliveries with him when I was a kid. And it never occurred to me that anything different about him.
He wasn't. He wasn't your uncle. Oh, that is hilarious. And I grew up with that. And
to me, that's normal, and I still see it today. I see that.
I do too.
I see lots and lots of people that don't have those problems.
Yeah,
we have.
Well, I think that when I say the good old days, I was castigated by a black talk show host named Laura Coates. And what Laura didn't get was when I said the good old days, I meant the days where black people had pride in themselves. They did not have 72% of black babies weren't born out of wedlock. Blacks dressed intelligently and well and were well groomed. Today we have multimillionaires running up and down basketball courts making $30 million a year with a hairstyle like Farina from the Little Rascals.
Yes.
I'm bad, huh, Stephen? I'm bad. I'm real bad, huh?
You're great. And I want to know when your book, read it, and I want to do this again if we can.
All right, Stephen Hayes from Fairtax. Go to fairtax.org. Check out his website, fairtax.org. Learn all you need to learn about taxes and taxations. Hey, look, we're almost done here for the weekend. Sorry about all the technical time, but we're going to ease on out, ease into the weekend. I'm a soul man. So we're going to go hang out, do a little writing this weekend. Look forward to seeing you around. So check out my website too. Take care.